Welcome to the Sports Beer Jokes YouTube channel. Today we are going to continue the series on this channel where we find each franchise's best team of all time. I choose each team by looking at the comments from my videos, so if you want me to do your favorite team, make sure you let me know. And that's the beauty of a small channel, boys. I can actually read every single comment and give y'all exactly what y'all want to see. So if you're a returning subscriber, you are the absolute GOAT. You have no idea how much you mean to me. And if this is your first time coming across the Sports Beer Jokes community, we have a little saying around here. If you like watching sports, drinking beer, and joking around with your buddies, well, this is the place for you. All of y'all, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We're growing this thing together, boys. Let's ride. And you already knew from the title, we're doing the Dallas Cowboys. Let's fucking go. And for the first time in Sports Beer Jokes history, there is no 21st century team in this video. The three teams we're going to be looking at are the 77, 92, and 93 Cowboys. So as usual, we'll go in chronological order. So let's go back to 1977. And let's look at this roster. Now, this is an old head team. And you know, I know ball, so I recognize a few of these guys, but I don't really fucking know what the league looked like back in 1977. So if you're somehow an old head, and I mean really old head, like how did you even discover YouTube? Like your signature's gotta be on the Declaration of Independence. Bro had to finish fighting in the War of 1812 before he could even watch the Cowboys. But seriously, Unc, let me know if I missed anyone important. But before doing my research, I'm actually pretty excited to learn about this team. Just expanding my ball knowledge and learning more about the 1970s NFL. And I'm happy to take you along for the ride because, hey, we're Sports Beer Jokes. We like to have fun around here. The QB1 was Roger Staubach, a player who I'm actually familiar with. He's in the Hall of Fame. Your great-great-grandpa might know him as Roger the Dodger or Captain America, but he actually had a really good year. He threw for 2,600 yards and 18 touchdowns on 58% completion. And I know those numbers probably gave you a visceral reaction, and believe me, me too. Like I actually wanted to throw up reading that. Disgusting. But you gotta keep in mind, this is when dinosaurs were roaming the earth. And in 1977, these were elite numbers. We are done with the 70s. This should eliminate this team right then and there. But we're not going to do that. We're going to look at it holistically and give them a fair shot. In the 70s, running back was actually the most important position in football over the quarterback. So passing the football did not look at all like we know it today. But Staubach was third in the league in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. So he was at the top of the league and had an elite season. Their running backs was rookie Tony Dorsett and backup Preston Pearson. They combined for over 2,000 total yards on the year and scored another 18 combined touchdowns. Fullback was also a position of much higher importance back then. And this team's fullback was number 44, Robert Newhouse. So, take with that as you will, pal. Their wide receiver one was Drew Pearson, who led the NFL in receiving yards that year. He was able to gut out a staggering 870 yards. And that made you the receiving yards leader in 1977. Come on. Also, their tight end was named Billy Joe Dupree, who was just a fucking dog, I'll guarantee you that. Defensively, this team had the NFL sack leader with Harvey Martin, who had 20 sacks in the regular season. They also had a D tackle named Randy White, who added another 12 and a half sacks. They also had a white free safety named Cliff Harris, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and had 5 interceptions in 1977. Other notable defenders they had were Thomas Henderson, Randy Hughes, Charlie Waters, and Mel Renfro. Overall, this team went 12-2. They had the number 1 offense and number 1 defense in total yards, and had the second highest scoring offense in the league. Their defense ranked 8th in points allowed and was a top 10 run defense, which is super important considering the run-heavy offenses of the 1970s. They would end up blowing out every single team they played in the playoffs and beating the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl 27-10 in the greatest venue in the history of sports, the Louisiana Superdome. Now, I know it's easy to kind of not take these old teams seriously, and I know I've been joking around, but I do want to give this team credit for what they were. They were an extremely potent offensive attack for their time, and they pretty much steamrolled everyone the entire season. They had a bunch of star power, a Hall of Fame, World War II veteran, straight beast of a head coach in Tom Landry. And if you don't know about Tony Dorsett, he was straight dynamite. Pure electricity, and I'm sure I'm gonna put some highlights of his on the screen when I edit this video. So all jokes aside, this team is no joke, no pun intended. Let's move on to the 90s, shall we? 1992. A lot's changed in 15 years. First thing you're gonna notice is that the TV quality has gotten a lot better, and I'm very happy about that. I couldn't stand looking at that grainy bullshit either. These next two teams that we're gonna look at happen back-to-back years, so they're gonna be very similar, obviously. So let's compare and contrast. Starting with the 92 squad, let's look at this roster. The offense is obviously the big three of Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. But the unit goes much deeper than that. Jay Novacek was a damn senior. Just a quarterback's best friend. The kind of guy that plays the game the right way. Come on. Troy Aikman had a great year, going for 3,400 yards and 23 touchdowns. Once again, don't let these numbers fool you. I know these numbers look like hot garbage from the perspective of 2024, but Aikman was near the top of the league in all of these stats that you see on screen. And believe me, I love shitting on the older generations as much as anybody. But one thing this little research assignment has been showing me is that the older generations actually aren't as bad as I initially thought they were going to be. I thought the 70s team was going to be essentially rugby, like not even the same sport that I'm used to. But after diving deeper into the film of those old games, I kind of realized that they were actually playing some good ball. Obviously, the players now are better, but those old dudes were still very high-level athletes. Time to put some respect on the old head's name. But this just goes for NFL, of course. As far as the NBA is concerned, we are still very much done with the 90s. And I know that trend's kind of dead now, but the truth of LeBron's GOATness still remains the same. If Jordan played in this generation, he would be a shittier version of Jaylen Brown. But anyway, back to the 92 Cowboys. Emmitt Smith had an insane year with 1,700 yards and 18 touchdowns. He actually had 2,000 when you count receiving yards. And what is it with players in this video having 18 touchdowns? He is now the third player. Like, if we had a nickel for every single time a player in this video had 18 touchdowns, we'd have 3 nickels.
Wow! If I had a nickel for every time I was doomed by a puppet, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Sick reference, though, bro.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
He also broke the NFL single-season rushing yards record on this run against the Bears, so pretty electric stuff. And in what should be no surprise to anyone, Michael Irvin also had a great year. He finished second in the league in receiving yards, only behind Sterling Sharp, and ahead of the fraudulent, overrated, fake GOAT Jerry Rice. Just thought I'd put that out there. But yeah, as an overall unit, this offense finished top 5 in pretty much every single major offensive stat. So in short, this offense had 3 Hall of Famers and were highly productive. But let's look at this defense. Notable defenders include, but are not limited to, Ken Norton, Robert Jones, James Washington, Tony Tolbert, Jim Jeffcoat, Charles Haley, and Kevin Smith. Jeffcoat led the team in sacks with 10.5, and James Washington and Kenneth Grant each had 3 picks on the year. This team wasn't necessarily elite at taking the ball away, which is usually how I personally like my defenses. I like a bunch of long, athletic freaks who change the outcome of games by taking the ball away and making plays. Yo, but what if instead of football, this was actually freak ball, and instead of taking the ball away, we took your virginity? Just getting silly. But anyway, back to the Cowboys. Although they didn't generate a lot of turnovers, they still were able to stop the opposing team from moving the ball. They finished first in yards allowed and 5 in points against. So they were a very productive unit. And when you combine that with the offensive firepower that they had, you get a very good team. They finished with a record of 13-3 and were second in the NFC. In the divisional round, they blew out their rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles, and advanced to the NFC Championship, where they would take on one of their other rivals, the San Francisco 49ers, led by Steve Young and Jerry Rice. The 49ers were actually the 1 seed this year, so they hosted in Candlestick. Let me tell you, if you're a damn football guy, which I assume you are if you're watching this video, you're gonna love this game. Do yourself a favor, and once you're done watching this video, and after you like, comment, and subscribe, of course, go watch this game on YouTube. Guaranteed to get your blood pumping. This is obviously an extremely storied matchup. 2 NFC powers who have been duking it out all throughout the 70s, 80s, and now into the 90s with this game. It was raining before the game, so now the field's all muddy. John Madden was up in the booth on the call. Absolutely electrifying. And obviously, as you probably assumed, the Cowboys would come out on top and advance to the Super Bowl, where they would go on and beat the living fuck out of the Bills. Big shout out to Don Beebe, though. One of the all-time great hustle plays in all of sports. Definitely deserving of an official Sports Beer Jokes Senior Moment title, even though he was in the middle of getting his ass kicked, which definitely isn't senior. But overall, this team pretty much dominated everybody that they had to play throughout the entire year, just like the 77 squad. It's a close race so far, but let's see the third contender. 1993. This team is basically a continuation of 1992. Same Hall of Fame coach Jimmy Johnson, who I don't even think I mentioned before, along with the same big 3 on offense, and of course, good old Jay Novacek was back. The production, however, was down from a year before. Smith still went nuclear, but not quite as nuclear. He did miss 3 games, though. Irvin had an almost identical year to his 1992 season. Aikman did miss 2 games, but played at pretty much the same level, besides his completion percentage, which actually took a pretty big jump. Defensively, they returned pretty much the same crew as well. Shout out Kevin Smith with 6 picks on the year. And in terms of overall production, they did about the same as they did in 1992, with the top 5 offense and the top 10 defense. Very, very similar team. They went 12-4, which is obviously one less than 13-3, but their playoff run was almost identical. They beat the Packers in the divisional round. Then they had a rematch with the Niners, this time in Dallas, a game which saw this happen pregame.
What happened? You talk about getting ready to play.
I don't think in all my years I've ever seen that, Pat.
I never have.
And what they did is they introduced the 49ers, and they didn't run out to the middle of the field. They just stayed there in the end zone.
Here we go. That is what football is all about right there. If you don't love that shit, number one, you're an op. And number two, I'm here to tell you, you don't like football, pal. Also, I think it's worth pointing out that Roger Staubach was an honorary captain for this game. QB1 for the 77 squad. But yeah, the Cowboys would go on and actually win by 17. And that set up another rematch with the Bills, who they blew out again. So comparing all three of these teams is going to be really tough. All three of these squads dominated everybody. And that's what makes it so tough, because you can't really point out a weakness in any of these teams. But in the end, I think I'm going to have to go with the 92 team. I was really torn between them and 77, to be honest. But I think you could realistically make an argument for any of these teams. I personally really value beating the 49ers on the road in Candlestick, so that's really what tipped it over the edge for me. My entire life, I've known the Cowboys as these fraudulent losers who are pathetic, but these old teams were very far from that. They were the real deal. Reminds me a lot of the LSU Tigers. 2024, we're coming. SEC, we're coming. Alabama, we're coming. Also, I made a chart for this series so we can keep up with each team and, add to it and whatnot. So yeah, fun.